Hi, I'm here today to tell you a little bit about the rhetorical analysis and some tips on starting to think about the rhetorical analysis. Now that you've completed the first paper, we'll be moving on to a rhetorical analysis. You'll take the skills that you've learned in creating the fable and start to use them to see how a writer applies these in the works we've read. First, let's highlight some of the skills that you had to use in the last paper and talk about how you'll use them in this new context. One of the skills you had to learn was when to quickly summarize points in your fable and then when to expand on them fully. You'll need to do this in the rhetorical analysis when you'll summarize parts of the story to give the reader the main point. In other areas, you'll need to fully describe what is happening and paint a picture of how a scene looks in the movie or on the page, or how we hear music in a certain way as an audience. That will be where your description comes in. Rhetorical awareness was quite important in the fable because you had to clearly show a message, tell this message in the genre of a fable, and think about how to best portray this message to your audience. Now, instead of you being the reader, you'll be analyzing how the reader has done this in order to portray his or her message. Speaking of message, this most clearly corresponds with the thesis in your argument and how you link all of your smaller claims back to this one main claim. As for structure, you learned in your fable that each new idea should be in a separate paragraph, and that ideas should flow from one thought to the next. That's no different for this essay. While you might not recognize the last three words, the Greek words used in rhetoric. First, pathos is how the reader appeals to emotion, and many of you were trying to figure out how to make your reader feel a particular emotion in the fable. In the rhetorical analysis, you could look at how successfully the writer is able to convey emotion to his audience. Logos means reasoning. Our English word logic stems from it. You had to make sure that each character's actions were logical in your story, and in the same way, you want to make sure all your claims are logical and that the reader isn't left questioning certain thoughts. The last word, ethos, means credibility, and you work to make yourself credible as a writer. You'll do this more in this paper by using sources to help build your credibility on the subject. You probably feel quite confident now that you realize all the skills you bring to the table, but you're still not quite sure what the assignment is and what your instructor is asking for. Look at these three areas to help define the concept a little more. The first is you're really looking at how, and that's the major question. How is this text created? You don't want to look at what it means, like this is a symbol for this, but how the writer possibly used a symbol in order to engage his audience. You can also examine message, audience, writer, context, or a combination of these. But don't think that you need to do all of these. It's a short paper, so you want to pick something small that you can really go into detail on and develop fully in a short paper. Make sure you check with your instructor about what class text you can use for the rhetorical analysis essay. They may only have several that they've decided to let you use. The last thing, one more of the things that you want to think about is how to bring new thoughts about these texts to the table. One of the most important things when you're writing a paper is adding insight. So one of the examples up here is Emily wears glasses because she's a teacher, and that's not very insightful. But if we look at the second example on the slide, it says, by wearing glasses, Emily uses an archetype of a professor to quickly portray to her students her credibility. The writer could then go on to examine the historical context of glasses, where the archetype originated from, what glasses signify to a particular audience, and the message that glasses might convey. You don't want to bring the most obvious thoughts because others will have considered those as well. So think about something new and different that you may have gleaned from the text and can share with your audience. The most important thing as you start to consider your options for the rhetorical analysis is to write about what your interests are. You're a better writer when you're engaged. So a few tips for this is to go back and check out some of your previous forums and notes that you've taken on the text. Highlight what is interesting to you. see what you were wanting to write about as you started writing about a few of these texts. You can free write or brainstorm ideas about the text to gather ideas. And then the other most important tip that I want to give you is that you consider your expertise. You probably have things that you're passionate about. Maybe it's art, perhaps it's music, perhaps it's fashion. But you can use these and some of your expertise to bring to the text that you're looking at. You might look at how the artwork is used in some of the comic book panels, or you might choose to look how music is used in a movie, or perhaps you want to look at fashion and look at the costumes used to portray a particular message. So think about your expertise, what you might have to bring to the table, and how that could allow your reader to consider the text in a new light. If you have any questions, of course, you should always email your instructor so that you can find out a little more about the rhetorical analysis.